welcome to Drums and Wires, tracks dissected by my buddy Peter Cook in the UK and myself, Steve Peer, here in the USA. Today we're going to have some fun with Roxy music. No, we're not going to do Virginia Plain, the rocket tune about a cigarette ad and a beautiful woman, but instead the opening track to the album, Remake, Remodel. You know, and hey, before we go much further, let me take this off. This is really silly, but that's what Roxy music was all about to some degree. But before we touch on the tune, let's talk about the cover, because the cover is striking for its day. It had a pinup gal on the front, and I just wanted, well, I hate to burst everyone's balloon, but it's not a drag queen. And no, it's not Brian Ferry, the lead singer in drag, which I always thought it was, and I wanted it to be so bad. I wanted that to be Brian Ferry in drag, and it wasn't. It wasn't even Brian Eno in drag. It was instead Carrie Ann Muller, who married Mick Jagger's brother, Chris Jagger. So, okay, enough of the cover, but let's get to the opening track, Remake, Remodel, which is a great postmodernist feast featuring solos by each member of the band, echoing various touchstones of Western music, including the Beatles' Day Tripper, Dwayne Eddy's version of Peter Gunn, Andy McKay, the sax player, even does the trumpet part for Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries. I mean, and Eno makes a lot of noise, which is really cool. So the middle of the song, or those solos, are really great.
Yeah, and it's it doesn't seem so outrageous now, but when you think that passing solos around the band is a thing that's done in the blues and jazz and what have you, you know, you expect the sax player and the mouth organ player and, you know, the guitarist to have a solo, but you don't expect Eno to have a solo. So, you know, and what they do is, it seems ill-fitting for the age, you know, March of the Valkyries and the rockabilly thing and the quotes of Dwayne Eddy. It's all a bit jumbled up and mixed, but that's why it was so good in its time, because this sort of stuff doesn't seem so odd now, but I think that marked Roxy music out as being extremely odd. And I've recreated the middle without all the dynamics. I've just recreated the middle here just to illustrate that part, if I can just do this. So I'm just going to hang on a sec. Here we go. That's just weird, isn't it? I mean, it took me about 5 minutes to make that, so I really apologise to Roxy Music for the fidelity, but nonetheless, that is the structure of the middle, with 5 minutes spent on it, and you've got, you know, there's a drum solo as well. Obviously, I didn't dare to try and replicate that because you're about to talk about it, but yeah, there's your sort of normal guitar solo, all that sort of stuff. But then you got Brian Eno just doing sort of what Brian Eno does. And, you know, it doesn't really... So that, in 1972, that was pretty strange, I think. But there was a drum solo in there, and you're going to talk about that, I think.
Well, this drum solo is a single stroke roll, done for 8 bars, very simple, but very dynamic and very strong. And again, at 17 or 18 years old, I found everything about the song, particularly these solo passages that you're referencing. I just found them very liberating. You know, it was like, man, a single stroke roll smeared all over the drums just sounded fantastic. Again, you know, Eno and the noise was just great. And and from what I can kind of dissect, the guitar through the whole song was a lot of single notes, but when he got to the solo, that's when he played the chords, which was really cool.
Which is where the Sex Pistols got. And where Dwayne Eddy got. It's all there, isn't it? It's all just... Because Roxy music were a bit rockabilly. There's something... It was a strange fusion, and you can hear quite a bit of Wayne Eddy in some of their music, actually.
Oh yeah, and I thought that certainly Brian Ferry's hairdo is very rockabilly, no question about it. And their fashion sense, I think, drew from the whole rockabilly sort of thing to some degree, as well as the glam, and the anything goes kind of thing in regard to fashion and so forth. So
So you were saying, Steve, that you were sort of empowered and allowed to go out and sort of do stuff at the age of 17, and I was empowered to go out and buy makeup.
there you go. Yeah, definitely a lot of makeup in the Roxy music circle. There's no question about it. You take a look at the photos and stuff, and yeah, they were up to no good.
I was just looking back at the video of Ferry doing this in 1972, and his eyes are sort of blue. They're just
oh yeah. Yeah, no shortage of color. Very colorful band in all aspects, that's for sure. And as we know, Brian Eno with hair when he was with Roxy Music, and he's since moved on. He was pretty popular with the new wave set in regard to production and so forth, and certainly became what I would consider maybe the fifth member of U2, certainly producing a lot of their material. And did pretty well for himself, but got his humble beginnings there with Roxy Music, that's for sure. And speaking of production, I remember when I was a roadie for a period of time with the band Television, and we would bring the equipment from a gig back to the loft there in Lower Manhattan, up the elevator, and we walk into the little cubicle to unload the gear at the end of the night. I always spied these 7-inch pile of reel-to-reels, and it said Eno on them. And I knew it was something that Eno had produced for Television, some demos. And while I was looking at them all kind of excited, I would always glance over and see Verlaine just kind of shaking his head about don't even ask me, Steve, don't even bother. And it's just kind of funny. It's that Eno was in New York for a while, and talking with the Talking Heads and Television and getting in on that scene, but never quite clicked. So back to the UK he came.
So, I mean, on that score, just staying on Brian Eno, I mean, he obviously isn't every musician's taste, and perhaps Verlaine was trying to go in a different direction. But I do remember some of the songs I had of Roxy Music. I had Pajama Rama as one of my favourite singles. And on the back of that, as I recall, was a thing called Sultaness, which is about 6 minutes of just this... It's Eno, and there's a sort of preparatronics at the end with sort of guitar appears, but it is just 6 minutes of drone. And at the time, we used to go down the pub and play bar billiards, and we'd sit there, and this pub landlord, it was just a drinking man's pub, and we used to put it on the jukebox, and it was so resonant that the jukebox would shake, and all the locals hated it because we'd go there nearly every night to play bar billiards, and we'd put this on about 7 times, and because it was 6 minutes long as well,
oh god,
drive them insane, and they would all sit there sort of mesmerized by this ambient drone. And wow. Eno then made U2 write exactly the same songs and just put this synth wash over them. I mean, I think he made the best U2 album ever. But, you do get what you get from Brian Eno, which might be why Tom Verlaine might not have enjoyed.
yeah, who knows? But anyway, speaking of the synthesizer too, for anybody you keyboard freaks out there, he was using the VCS3 synthesizer on that first album, and again, that doesn't mean very much to me, but I just thought I'd toss it out there. And I think finally to wrap up this session a little bit, we're talking 1972, and we could all add in a bunch of albums from that era, especially a lot of American ones, Eat a Peach by Allman Brothers and so forth. But in the UK, I mean, you had Ziggy Stardust was released that year, T-Rex dropped Slider, the Stones had Exile on Main Street. I mean, it's amazing this album, got any or notice at all. But it's such a striking album to start with, and the opening track, Remake Remodel. I mean, I think it's just an absolute riot. Really is really a fun tune.
And when we come on to Mark Bolan, I'm bound to say that if I had been homosexual, I'd have wanted to date him.
All right. Well, listen, that concludes today's show. Peter, thank you very much. As always, we know you folks have a lot to say, a lot of inaccuracies to correct on our part. You know, who knows? We don't know everything. And please subscribe, comment below. Hopefully, we'll add the song Remake Remodel to the video here, or maybe the link. And for those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, you can give it a listen. And we'll see you next time. Thank you and good night.